We have a lot of people that come back and watch the recordings too, which is great.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You guys do a good job up there.
We do
Thank
okay.
you. Oh, yeah.
It's
You're the best in the nation and you know it,
No,
Jeremy.
we're not. We are not the best in the nation. LA, I think is, you know what? There's so
Oh.
many groups out there now. You guys are I mean, I wouldn't even know, to be honest with you. There's so many good groups. We have been around a long time, but there's lots of people doing so many new and amazing and just incredible things. And it's always cool to learn what other people are doing. So
Oh, yeah.
I'm just excited we've been able to do it as long as we have. So okay, I think what I'll go ahead and do then for the recording is just go ahead and do the spiel. And then let me go ahead and highlight you as the speaker. Spotlight. You are spotlit for everyone.
Hmm.
So that should be good. Okay. Welcome, everyone. If you are just joining us, this is the ADHD KC parent group meeting. And tonight we have Paula Smith presenting for us. I'll tell you a little bit about her in a minute, but my name is Jeremy Didier. I am the co-founder and co-coordinator of ADHD KC. And we are a CHAD chapter. CHAD is the international nonprofit agency that supports adults and kids and people who love them with ADHD. And we would love to have you sign up to join CHAD. ADHD KC gets about half of every CHAD membership. It helps us provide things like this. It helps us pay for our Zoom account, helps us, pay for our PowerPoint slides and things like that. But more importantly, it helps us provide advocacy. And as you guys know, it's an interesting world out there these days. And so, people with ADHD need your support. So if you're able to join CHAD, that's one easy thing to do to help support people with ADHD. Another thing is to share your story. There's a place on the CHAD website where you can log in and record a video of yourself talking about your ADHD journey or your child's ADHD journey. If you want to reach out to your representative, you can do that through the CHAD website as well. As you guys know, Section 504 is under attack, and there's 17 states that are suing to get rid of it altogether. We should know more about that. So if that bothers you, you may want to reach out to your representatives and let them know. If it doesn't bother you, that's fine too. But if it does, then that's the place where you can do that. Or you can donate to CHAD. Coming up for ADHD KC, we have a new event. It's called Community and Connect. It's like a peer support group. It's led by Lauren, who is one of our newer ADHD KC parent members. And she just hangs out in a Zoom room on Fridays from 11 to noon. And whoever shows up, you guys just hang out and chat about what's been going on. So that's kind of a cool deal. She's had several people show up and she's there every Friday. So if you want to join, just sign up through our website, adhdkc.org, and you'll get a link. In April, we're going to have Making Friends for our teen group, which is now led by Stephanie Ortiz, and she's fantastic. Also in April for our women's group, Craft and Connect. Again, sign up online. This is an in-person event, not a virtual one. So if you do want to go to that, space is limited. Definitely sign up online. And then coming up in May, summer survival and time management in ADHD for our women's group. And let's see, Paula's got something exciting coming up in April. If you're a clinician, they're doing a training on understanding and treating ADHD, and space is very limited for this one. So register now. There's the QR code to scan if you want to sign up for that. Coming up in November is the International Conference on ADHD. For the first time ever, it's going to be here in Kansas City. I'm so excited about it. If you RSVP on the ADHD KC website, that does not mean that you are going. There's a whole separate event thing that's going to come out that you'll have to fill out when we start getting the tickets ready to go. But just save the date for now. The call for proposals for speakers is out, though. So if you would want to submit a proposal, you can do that. I'll post the link in the chat here in a little bit. And we also have calls for nominations for CHAD national board members. So if you want to contribute in a more macro level, you can sign up to be a board member for CHAD, or you can join one of the CHAD national committees and serve that way. We have committees that work on public policy and advocacy. our editorial advisory board, works on Attention Magazine and does our website and social media. We've got a governance committee. We have a professional advisory board that's consists of our clinicians and psychologists, psychiatrists, if you're interested in joining that board. Our education committee is one of our newer committees, but it consists of teachers, professors, excuse me, all types of educators. So if that's something you might be interested in, you can sign up for that one. And then the chapter advisory board is, made up of people like us who run local chapters or attend local chapters. So if you're interested in any of those committees, I'll post the link in the chat for that as well. Okay, and because we are a CHAD chapter, we do not endorse any specific product, service, publication, medication, or treatment. All right, Paula, I'm going to stop the share here and turn it over to you. Remember how to do that? So I have known Paula a very long time, back at the beginning of the ADHD journey, believe it or not. Hasn't it been like 15 years, Paula?
Let's see.
Pretty close.
Or more.
Or
Yeah.
more.
Yeah,
Yeah,
about 15. Yeah,
about
I
15
think so.
years. And
Yes.
I am honored to call her a friend, and I'm so excited that we've gotten the chance to reconnect recently. Paula is the co-coordinator for the CHAD chapter in Nashville, Tennessee, called CHAD Nash, which or ADHD Nashville, depending on what you prefer. She's also a retired licensed professional counselor, and I'll let her tell you a little bit more about herself, but she's a passionate advocate for people with ADHD, and she's just phenomenal, and I'm really thrilled that she agreed to speak for us today. So take it away, Paula.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. I'm so glad to be here. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, keep it going.
Okay. Okay, well, I wanted to start out by saying that I'm not a medical provider or scientist. I'm a licensed professional counselor specializing in ADHD, and I'm providing information and knowledge that may be helpful for you or your children with ADHD. A good amount of this information, you can find evidence on both sides, some support and some to disprove. I've used peer-reviewed articles and scientific references. However, some of the information is just knowledge. These are suggestions for potential help with ADHD symptoms. And I'm excited to share with you because it is something that I've become very passionate about. Tonight, we'll be discussing the environmental factors and the links between that and ADHD. We know that genetics plays the biggest part in ADHD and parental aspects as well. But tonight we're just going to be talking about the environment. In the last couple of decades, we've become more cognizant and aware, and people are saying things like, is the water filtered? Is the meat from a local farm? Are those vegetables and fruits organic? Is that real lavender or is that a fragrance? And so we know that we're becoming more aware, but really what's out there in regard to ADHD and how that plays a part in all of this is what I'm going to be talking about tonight. Wonder why it's not going.
Is it not advancing?
Not
If you
advance.
click on, sometimes you have to click back on the PowerPoint. There we go.
There we go.
Perfect.
Thank you.
You betcha.
Okay. So another thing I need to ask you, Jeremy, is on the where I have people's names and your name, like if that's covering the slide for me, how do I move that?
You should, if you minimize it, if you hit the little yellow button, that should just make us disappear pretty much. Or you can just move us completely out of the way.
I got it. I got it. I think.
Yeah, I hate when that
Thank
happens.
you. Oh, thank
Gotcha.
you.
No problem.
Okay, we're going to be identifying these factors of the environment, make connections on where they're found, recognize how they affect the ADHD individual, give some strategies on how to prevent or reduce exposure, and then understand about epigenetics and environmental causes that can improve the ADHD symptoms. Prenatal and perinatal influences on ADHD symptoms in children come from smoking and vaping, alcohol use, substance abuse, maternal stress, low birth weight, premature birth, and then the environmental toxins. And so toxic chemicals in pregnancy, how those interact, we'll be talking about as I go through the slides tonight. You can see on the left-hand side many of the chemicals and additives, pesticides, and then on the right, it's just talking about ways to avoid those, which we'll be doing as we go through the slides. Epigenetics and ADHD. As we know, ADHD is 70 to 80% heritable, and it's estimated that 10 to 40% of the variance is likely to be accounted for by environmental factors. ADHD is a genetic disorder, but DNA is not working alone. Stress, foods, and environmental toxins do change the brain as well. And these are some of the environmental factors that we will be talking about tonight. The first one is lead, and a new study is the first to establish a causal link between lead exposure and ADHD, showing that it does lead to symptoms of attention deficit in certain children. Lead is a toxic metal commonly found in old paint, contaminated soil, other water sources. Children with higher lead levels in their blood have an increased risk of developing ADHD symptoms. We know that it affects the brain development, particularly regions involved in attention regulation and impulse control. And even low levels of lead exposure can have an effect on cognitive and behavioral functioning. Artificial food colorants, there's no conclusive evidence that food dyes are dangerous to most people, but we know that they may cause allergic reactions to some people, and we know that it causes hyperactivity of insensitive children. Most food dyes are found in unhealthy foods anyway, that we should be avoiding, but in our culture, in our country, we have thousands of foods with the artificial food colorants. Current evidence from studies in humans, largely from controlled exposure studies in children, supports a relationship between food dye exposure and adverse behavioral outcomes in children, both with and without pre-existing behavioral disorders. I'm a mom of 3 girls, and one of my girls has ADHD. When she was about 9 or 10 years old, we were shopping in Costco, and we were pretty much having our lunch, you know how you can by eating the samples. And we had a piece of pizza, was one of the things that had eaten. But I was on the phone with my sister, and all of a sudden, Anna's behavior started changing, and I was like, what is going on with you? And I asked her that question. And a little bit later, she came back and she goes, Mom, I went and found the sauce that the pizza was made from, and it has red food coloring in it. And so she was very aware, even by that age, that when she would eat something with food coloring, how it made her feel. And it basically exacerbates the ADHD symptoms. Hyperactivity is one of them. She would get kind of a agitated, hyper mean when she had the food dye. I'm sorry, sorry about the background sound. I also have 6 grandchildren, and 2 of them have sensitivity to the food dye as well. One of the oldest grandson, my daughter put him an elimination diet, and he did very well with it. And his dad was still questioning, is that really making a difference? Well, we went out to have ice cream with him. We were visiting one time, and he said, well, let's just let him put all the toppings on that he wants. And so he did, and it was a really good thing for his dad, because his dad was like, oh my gosh, he was wired as tight as a top. He was just his behavior just totally changed in that 10-15 minutes after having that food dye. So my youngest grandson has a sensitivity to it as well, and I took him out for ice cream and he wanted the happy sundae. And I was like, yeah, that's fine. Just take the happy sundae. And I wasn't aware what was on the happy sundae, but I was after, after about 15 minutes after we'd had the treat. My two grandsons that I'm talking about do not have ADHD. So as this current study shows, the behavior outcomes in the children, both with or without it, the behavioral disorder can cause them to have these reactions. So artificial dyes derived from petroleum are found in thousands of foods, and they're foods that are particularly produced and they're attractive to children. So what can we do about that? We'll choose, of course, healthy whole foods. Numerous studies have confirmed that synthetic food colors are a major source of exacerbating symptoms and can lead to severe health problems. Removing the processed foods from your diet and focusing on healthy whole foods will improve your overall health and drastically decrease your intake of the artificial food dyes in the process. And the picture I chose just kind of shows how you can ditch some of these foods that do have the red, well, any food dye in them, but this chart happens to be red 40. I know we did get rid of one of the reds already since, in the last couple of months, I guess. And so that's something our country is looking to do, and you've probably heard talk about that. But one thing that I've done since Anna was very young, and both my daughters do because they each do have a child with ADHD, as well as the food dye issue. And so we shop at Trader Joe's, not to be promoting Trader Joe's necessarily, but just it is easy to go into that store and shop and know that you don't have to worry about the artificial ingredients and additives. Sodium benzoate is a powder used to inhibit growth of bacteria. It's used in food, in cleaning supplies, shampoos, cosmetics, all kinds of things. Studies show a decrease in the volume of parts of the brain of those who have been exposed to a high amount of sodium benzoate. And I think just right here at this part of the presentation, I wanted to talk a minute about getting into the habit of using apps if you can. Like I said, I like to shop at Trader Joe's so I don't have to read all the labels on what the ingredients are. But one thing you can do is you can get the app on your phone. The one that is popular is Yucca, and another one is One Label that I happen to use. But the thing that's so great about it is, like, my friend for Christmas gave me this little bag of treats type things and gave me this really cute pink packaged Dove Nourishing body cream. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. Oh my gosh, I can't wait to try that. And then I thought, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and check it. And so I did, and it came up 7 out of 100. Now you have to be cautious about these, and what you want to do when you do find out the score is to go ahead and check out what all the list is on the ingredients, if it's moderate risk, low risk, and then you can actually tap on those and it'll go to tell you all about that. Like this was stearic acid, for instance, was an ingredient, and it tells you all the scientific references and everything that you can research it on. So just a tip for helping to prevent and avoid being exposed too much to these chemicals. Here's another one, potassium sorbate. The research suggests there's a potential link between potassium sorbate and ADHD, yet it is speculative. So even though they've done different studies on it, I think one that was done was on kids drinking soda pop that had the potassium sorbate, and they did found that it did impact their ADHD symptoms. But again, eating fewer processed foods, checking the label, Monosodium glutamate's been around a long time. It's a flavor enhancer commonly used in soups, ramen, gravy, stews, condiments, a lot of processed meat, hot dogs, lunch meat. And with MSG, it does have an impact on the brain chemistry, potentially disrupting neurotransmitter balance and causing behavioral changes like hyperactivity and difficulty focusing in susceptible individuals. So again, it's if they're susceptible to the sensitivity to the MSG. In the European nation, they have the MSG has limits on the amount that can be included in the per servings of the product. Next one we're going to look at is artificial sweeteners. And these artificial sweeteners may worsen ADHD symptoms again in some people. Possible effects of these are headaches, learning problems, memory loss, and then also can affect the hippocampus. And so again, if you're wanting to avoid sugar, then looking at alternatives like raw organic honey, pure maple syrup, molasses, date syrup, coconut sugar, stevia. Pesticides is something that is of great concern, and they've been around for a long time. But we know that about 7 billion pounds of pesticides, which is a catch-all term for herbicides, which are insecticides, fungicides, and pesticides, are applied to crops from seed to harvest, and they're used to preserve the quality and quantity of the fruits, vegetables, and grains. Herbicides like Monsanto's weed killer glyphosate make up the bulk of the pesticides applied worldwide. And we know that their exposure to pesticides is linked to cancers, leukemia, asthma, type 2 diabetes, and neurological conditions such as Parkinson's disease. The test that was done that I included in my slides was the developmental pesticide exposure produces features of attention deficit hyperactive disorder in rodents. So this was done on mice. However, we don't want to be doing it on children. So this is one way that science researches and we find out what is going on with that substance and how is it affecting the body. When I was growing up, from the time I was 4 or 5 years old, I was responsible for helping the family on the farm. And one of the things that we did on the farm was hoe beans. And the picture here shows that's a field of soybeans. And that's what we raised, soybeans and corn. But with the soybeans, when there were weeds, Dad would use a cultivator to cultivate the rows of beans and get most of the weeds. But when the large weeds that were hard to get down with the cultivator, we had to walk the field, and that's what was called hoeing beans. And from the time I could see over the top of them, I had 2 rows. And as you got older, you had 10 to 12 rows, like 5 to 6 on each side. You'd go along and cut down the weeds. And that's how we hoed beans. And that's how we got the weeds out of the beans, was by walking them. And when I was 18, I remember Dad was like, we need to go behind the house and just hoe this one field. And I'll never forget, I was like hammering the weeds saying, I am never going to hoe beans again as long as I live. And anyway, in 1974 was when they came out with glyphosate. And so when they came out with glyphosate, the farmers, what they did then was rigged up the back of their tractors so that kids mainly and adults could ride on the back and spray the weeds then with the glyphosate. So they would just spray exactly the spray onto the weeds and kill the weeds that way. Well, in the 90s, they invented GMOs. And what the GMOs do is they keep the plant from being affected by the weed killer. So the GMOs, which are genetically modified organisms, is what our grains are now, and they're that way so that we don't have to walk the bean fields anymore, basically, so that they can uh, ward off the insecticide or the pesticide being sprayed on the beans or on the corn. Studies do show that exposure produces neurochemical and behavioral alterations similar to those observed in ADHD, and that elevated urinary metabolites, that's how they check it, in children are associated with increased likelihood of the ADHD diagnosis. The majority of the studies included in this review suggest a significant association between exposure to pesticides and ADHD or ASD. These results should be considered with caution, however, due to a number of methodological issues with the research. So what do we do about this? Well, buying organic foods is one thing you can do. Organic foods don't have more nutrition, but they do not have the pesticides, hormones, and other additives linked to ADHD. So in a study of 1,100 children, those with high levels of pesticides in their urine were twice as likely to have ADHD. So organic foods is a good option. Also, buying grass-fed, grass-finished beef is a good option if you're wanting to avoid the GMOs. The grass-fed, if you're buying hamburger and it says grass-fed on it, well, that's all fine and good, except if it doesn't say grass-finished, chances are they took the cattle were fed grain, and the GMOs were likely in the grain and feed. And then that's what farmers do to fatten up the cattle before they sell them, because they get sold by the pound. So grass finished beef is what you want to look for. And I can tell you that Walmart actually sells grass-fed, grass-finished beef. So it surprised me when I could get it there, but I was really excited that I could. Our body needs fat to function and survive, and clinical and biochemical evidence suggests that deficiencies of the polyunsaturated fatty acids could be related to ADHD. Research has shown that children and adolescents with ADHD have significantly lower plasma and blood concentrations of the PUFAs and the lower levels of the omega-3 PUFAs, which are the ones that we really want to encourage ADHD kids to get in supplements. These findings suggest that PUFA supplementation may reduce the attention and behavior problems associated with ADHD, while the supplementation has health benefits. Its role in ADHD treatment is not strongly supported. It's not to treat the ADHD, but to support the treatment. And so as we look at these eating healthy fats, we used to think, oh, fats, you shouldn't have fats, but we do need them because they protect and support our brain function. They help absorb all the fat-soluble vitamins A, D, E, and K. It's just choosing the healthy fats is what's important. And so if you see in the center there, I've got the trans fats, which are fats that are found in cookies, cakes, French fries, fried foods, mostly ready prepared meals. The unsaturated fats on the right, you've got monosaturated and polyunsaturated. And the monounsaturated are the ones that are healthy, where the polyunsaturated are the seed oils. And so we've been hearing about seed oils lately, and people saying, there's even an app now that you can get on your phone where if you're wanting to look for a restaurant that has the is using the tallow instead of the seed oils to fry the French fries in. You can find that now. But why are they bad? It's because they're processed, super uber processed. They're soaked in sodium hydroxide and then bleach. And this is all to keep them from turning rancid. And it destroys the vitamins A, D, E, and K. And so that's the main reason we want to avoid the polyunsaturated seed oils. Okay. So what's good, bad, and ugly fats? Here on the left, you can see we've got coconut, avocado, grass-fed butter, ghee, wild salmon, olive oil, seeds, nuts, uh, pasture-raised organic eggs, and then again in the middle are the seed oils, and then the ones that are really concerning are the shortenings, vegetable oils, margarines, things like that, that are mainly found in snack foods or what we call junk food. One thing we want to be sure and be aware of is the omega-3s are very important for the neurotransmission, so protecting the brain by decreasing the inflammation. And so our ancestors ate a diet of 2-to-1 omega-6-3 ratio, and today it's 15-to-1 is what the American diet is. So there is sufficient evidence that what we want to do is choose the omega-3s over the omega-6 oils. And we know that the omega-3 fatty acids is a possible supplement, actually, that can help with ADHD. But again, it does not replace the medication and the behavioral therapies that are successful in ADHD treatment. BPAs is a chemical used in production of plastics and resins, and it enters the body through ingestion, inhalation, and dermal intake. Everyday products, even canned goods, can have BPA in the lining of the can. Food containers, bottled water, sunglasses, store receipts even have, whenever somebody asks me if I want a receipt, I always say no, thank you. And I worry about the people that work at the store and are handling those all day long. But anyway, BPA disrupts the endocrine system, possible links to high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and can affect the normal neurodevelopment. According to the NIH, a study done in 2023 concluded that BPA exposure during childhood influences the incidence of ADHD as well as symptom presentation. And so what you want to do is use BPA-free products, glass, porcelain, stainless steel, avoid heating foods in plastic, and the plastics that have the number 3 and 7 on the bottom of the container are ones that you want to avoid using. Here's tips to avoid BPA in food and water. And again, I already mentioned like the cans and the type of drinking containers of glass and stainless steel are best. Discard any damaged plastic containers. And again, preferring the fresh organic produce is what's going to be the best, because even when you buy the processed foods that are in the freezer section to reheat in your microwave, many times those containers have BPA. But look for the BPA-free certified label. We're going to go through a few other of these additives that we find in food, cosmetics, children's toys, food packaging, scented cleaners, PVC, and flooring. The researchers reported in the JAMA that ordinary exposure to phthalates as found in urine samples was associated with ADHD related behaviors in adolescents. So the study was done on adolescents, but they did see the association with the behaviors and the amount of exposure that they'd had to phthalates. Not so fun facts, they're found in 99% of Americans. And we know that in the European Union, they are restricted in some toys and cosmetics. But in the United States, we don't have that set into place yet. So you've got to protect yourself by looking for those ingredient names. Phthalate, fragrance, PVC, vinyl, DBP, DEP, and MEP. Parabens is another chemical that is, with the diagnosis of ADHD, was associated with the prenatal exposure to the parabens and the childhood exposure to parabens. These are found in cosmetics, pharmaceuticals, foods, beverages. You can see there what the ingredient names are. How to avoid them, again, read the ingredient list, look for products labeled paraben-free. And let's see. Yeah, so we'll go ahead and go to the next one. The next one is PFAS. We found evidence that the maternal serum concentrations of that during pregnancy were associated with hyperactivity and hyperactive type ADHD in young school-age children. There's evidence that exposure to these substances is associated with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder symptoms. And so, where do we find these? In clothing, textiles, adhesives, food packaging, non-stick cooking services. So the non-stick pots and pans, it's good to throw those out if you're still using those. Anyway, it's found in 95% of Americans, and it's called the forever chemical because they don't degrade. So again, you want to avoid them by drinking filtered water, using stainless steel, cast iron cookware, avoid stain and water resistant fabrics, eat less fast food and the microwave popcorn and meals. Volatile organic compounds, there's a group of chemicals that are released into the air as gases from products and processes. Things like air fresheners, cleaning supplies, food containers, glue, hairspray, perfume, nail polish, paint, fuels. How to avoid them is to replace them with solvent-based paints, with water-based paints, increase indoor ventilation, and then look for the low VOCs on the label. Again, the VOCs during pregnancy or after birth may increase the risk of ADHD. Children exposed to the indoor air pollutants had higher odds of ADHD symptoms. Flame retardants is another one. It's on furnishings, electronics, electrical devices, building and construction material. The adverse health effects may include the endocrine and thyroid disruption, reproductive toxicity, cancer, adverse effects on the fetal and child development and neurobehavioral functioning. Polyester clothing is another, there's not a lot out there with polyester associated with ADHD, but I just want to talk about it for a minute because I've just experienced this personally. First of all, polyester is made from crude oil. That's how it starts. And 2/3 of the textile fibers are synthetic out there. So more than half are made of oil-based polyester. And polyester microfibers do affect the humans when we have contact with it, either inhaling it or consuming it or getting it through contact with our skin. Studies show certain individuals with ADHD may experience increased sensitivity to chemicals found in synthetic fabrics, potentially contributing to sensory issues and impacting their behavior. However, most research is needed in this area. More research is needed in this area, and it currently lacks strong peer-reviewed support. We know that with ADHD, they tend to have sensitive skin already and have sensitivity issues with fabrics and textures. And I bought a sweater that was 100% polyester, and I thought it was just the cutest sweater, and I just loved it. And I put it on to wear one day, and I mean, that polyester sweater drove me crazy all day long. And I thought to myself, how many parents buy clothing for their children and their children are complaining about it, and the parent says, oh, just go ahead and wear it anyway. And I just wanted to bring that up because with ADHD kids, listen to what they say about the clothing and how it's feeling on their body. And the polyester does, many times these microfibers can cause the extra sensitivity in these certain kids that have that already. So what do we do about it? We can wear organic cotton, wool, linen, bamboo, hemp, and modal. Buy natural fibers, avoid stain repellent, anti-odor, easy care, wrinkle-free treated clothing. All those, again, are chemicals on the natural fibers. In the United States, there's no federal standard of what can be put on clothing and sold to adults. The European Union, they do have guidelines of different chemicals that can't be put on clothing or a percentage of the amount that can be put on clothing. But in the United States, what you can do is look for these different signs, the OEKO text. They're tested for harmful substances. I bought a pair of leggings at Aldi's of all places, but they have those Aldi finds, And anyway, it had the OEKO text on it. So even though they're polyester, I know that they don't have the other harmful substances on the fabric or in the fabric. Organic textile standards, and then the blue sign approved fabric. So look for those when you're shopping the natural fabrics. Okay, the next thing we're going to talk about is electromagnetic fields. And this is something that's it's not a new thing, but it's something I think we kind of have tried to ignore because we all love our cell phones for one thing. But the electromagnetic fields, there's a book written by Dr. Joseph Mercola, who's probably the expert in the United States on the electromagnetic fields. And it's called EMFD, if any of you are interested in searching that out some more. The electronic devices that we use emit harmful electromagnetic radiation, and this can disrupt our biological processes. This shows some of the electronic devices and the amount of pollution that comes from the currents. And it's talking about the distance recommended safety levels and the distance from that. So that blender is emitting that much electricity even when it's not in being used. So even just being plugged in, their electromagnetic radiation, we get exposure to that. Be aware of the placement and setting, of course, of your phones and your wireless devices. These polluted electrical currents flow through the wiring system, appliances, and lights. And then the other thing about the electronics is the location of power lines, cell towers, 5G towers, power plants, in relation and distance from your home, school, parks, and place of work. In the book, the doctor talks about, a family who lived near the big power lines, and they were having health issues that they were able to get rid of when they moved away from that. And then just recently, the government also filed a new legislation that schools could not be within so many feet of the cell towers or 5G towers. And so, of course, that'll take some years to make happen, but that's something that we can see happening for our kids to get them moved away from those strong electronic currents. The EMFs and ADHD. Okay, how does that relate? Well, the findings provide new evidence that in utero exposure to a high level of MF non-ionizing radiation is associated with an increased risk of ADHD in offspring. And so they talk about the mom, like I have the picture of her sitting there holding on to the cell phone, and how they're finding that cell phone use during pregnancy can increase the risk of ADHD in offspring. So pregnant moms should keep their phones far away as they can from their bodies. And then the damage of DNA related to EMF and changing expression of the gene is also concern. Research shows that being exposed to RFs can cause much damage to the neurons in the brain, and this can lead to changes in memory and learning, which are symptoms of ADHD. But we did discover that one of the main studies here was retracted. And so whenever that occurs, you do want to be concerned about why it was retracted. That in that case, it sounded like it was some numbers that were not clear in the study. Endocrine disruptors we've talked about throughout this whole slideshow. The National Institute of Environmental Health and Science supported research has discovered these links between endocrine disrupting chemicals and the ways in which well-being may be harmed. So again, we've talked about all of those, and even low doses of these chemicals may be unsafe. So the body's normal endocrine function involves very small changes in hormone levels, yet we know even these small changes can cause some significant developmental and biological disruptions. So avoiding these disruptors when possible. Epigenetics and ADHD, more epigenetic research is needed. However, a few things are clear. Omega-3 supplementation, aerobic exercise, stress management can have real positive effects on ADHD symptoms in both children and adults. If ADHD symptoms can be worsened by environmental causes, they can be improved by them too. And we know that while genes may make someone more prone to certain diseases or disorders, including ADHD, the entire genetic system is highly dynamic and responsive to input. This means there is potential to change the expression of a person's ADHD genes by making certain environmental changes. I wanted to also share with you something that came out on my Instagram this week. It was Dr. Mark Hyman's Instagram site post. And anyway, there was a study published in the Lancet that he shared. He's actually a functional medical doctor for Cleveland Clinics. But anyway, he wanted to share the study. So the study was done on 100 children with ADHD, and they were put on an elimination diet, removing artificial additives, gluten, and dairy. And within 5 weeks, 78% of them showed significant reduction in all their ADHD symptoms. And when they started to put the foods back into their diet, it showed that the symptoms did recur. So it's a very good study. And if you want to look it up, that you may want to check that out, because that may be a good direction for you to go with your kids if you're concerned about what's going on with their diet. Again, I'm not a medical provider or scientist. I'm a licensed professional counselor specializing in ADHD. I'm providing information and knowledge that may be helpful for you or your children with ADHD. You can find evidence of a good amount of this information on both sides, some supporting and some disproving. I've used peer-reviewed articles and scientific references. However, some of the information is just knowledge. So these are suggestions for potential help with the ADHD symptoms. And I thank you so much for having me here today.
That is awesome. Thank you so much, Paula. A lot of this stuff I feel like causes all kinds of bad things. Like can cause cancer, can cause, I would imagine that exposure to, pesticides, we know it causes cancer. We know that,
Right.
like the
Yeah.
nonstick pans and stuff. It says right on there that it causes, can cause cancer too. So it's a lot of stuff to avoid for a lot of reasons, not just that makes ADHD symptoms worse or can make ADHD symptoms worse.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. How do you, I don't know, as I was going through the list of things, I was like, oh my God, how can I possibly avoid all these things? Like they're all out there. What do I
Yeah.
do?
It is. It's kind of like, baby steps. Just doing what you can when you can,
Mhm.
making those small changes. I fix a meal for my grandkids and their family about every week, once a week, and I always take dessert. So they
Uh-huh.
always count on Grammy bringing dessert. Well, anyway, I bought this brownie mix, and it's Reese's Brownie Mix
Mhm.
by Betty Crocker.
Mhm.
Anyway,
Sounds good to
you'd
me.
think he does fine, right?
Mhm.
35 out of 100.
And
And
that's good or is that bad? Like a lower number is
that's
good?
bad.
Okay,
That's
lower number
bad.
is
30,
bad.
yeah, the lower the number, the worse it is. And so it does have on here like the different additives like sorbitol, I can't even pronounce. That's what they always
Yeah,
say. If you can't pronounce it, don't buy
it's
it.
probably not good for you.
But
Yeah.
one thing I was going to tell you was on here was because I kind of looked at it and I thought, well, I didn't even look at that at the store. So when I got it home, I looked at it and I was reading through here and I was like, Oh my goodness gracious. And then it says contains bioengineered food ingredients. And I thought,
What is that?
bioengineered food ingredients. So bioengineered food ingredients is GMOs.
Yeah.
So anyway, the soybeans and the wheat or whatever, the flour would contain GMOs. So um anyway, my daughter, I was telling her about it. She goes, "Did you throw it in the trash?" I said, "No, I'm going to use it when I do my presentations."
What were the names of the apps again? Yucca?
Yucca, and the other one that I use is I think it's called One Label. Yeah, One Label.
One label. Okay. If you guys have questions, you can put them in the chat or unmute yourself, either way. The microplastics have been terrifying me, not so much for ADHD stuff, but just everything that they're finding out about microplastics. And I'm sure,
Mm-hmm.
I keep telling my kids, I'm so sorry because I had all those water bottles in the car for so long, just because we all needed to
Yeah.
water to drink at all the sports practices.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah. Have you heard the study where it says a week's, let's see, is it a month's time we can have as much as a credit card amount of plastics from all the microplastics? I mean, it's just ridiculous amount.
what's the Think Dirty app? That sounds like something else entirely.
Oh, yeah, that's a good app too.
Okay.
Yeah, same thing.
Oh, cool. Think Dirty app. I'm just going to make a list to share with people.
It's a play
Yeah.
on words for sure, but
Obviously.
Mm.
It's a whole different presentation
Mm.
for the adult group. Just kidding.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Anybody have any other questions or last things that you want to share or things that we didn't touch on that you think are important to point out? Actually, I'm going to stop the recording because we usually don't do I usually don't record the questions just in case.